Thank you, everyone, for joining us for this conversation around building platforms to support a compound startup at Rippling. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what you'll get out of this talk, some of the things around Rippling, what does platform even look like today in 2023, as well as some of the mechanics, some of the really leaning into the no BS part about just going through everything and all the tactical lessons we learned at Rippling. Cool. So a little bit about myself. I am now the ex-VP of engineering as of 2 days ago. So this is my fun employment plans, is to give this talk right here. So at Rippling, I joined early on. I built our core HR products as well as our underlying platform, really what's enabling us to grow from where we started as Series A to now Series Z, 2,000-something people. And prior to Rippling, I was actually founder as well as engineering at Twitter, Periscope, et cetera. So what you'll kind of really get out of this talk is around kind of like some of the best practices and how to build a platform to support a multifaceted product engineering org, right? So we'll kind of go through a lot of the details, a lot of the stories, a lot of the quick examples, again, and the no BS side. And I know there's so many topics to cover within 20 minutes. We definitely won't get through all of it. So please feel free to send in your questions, and we'll try to cover as much as we can during the Q&A session. Cool. So to get a baseline, what is Rippling, right? Rippling is this compound startup comprised of HR, IT, and finance software, all built on top of the employee record, aka the employee graph, and really the single unified platform, which we call Rippling Unity. This platforming is encompassing of things like our analytics engine, our workflow systems, our policy and permissions products, and everything that you need to really build a platform and build a company such as Rippling. And a little bit of statistics as well, like what does Rippling do? Well, it's easier to iterate what Rippling doesn't do at this point, right? Which is we cover all the different things that you need to run your company. And on top of our platform right now, we are supporting tens of thousands of customers, and for a little bit of statistics about the company, we actually have 2,000-something employees and 600+ engineers. And for a company at our stage, we already have 30-something different product SKUs, which is very atypical of a company of our size and stage, right? So this is why we actually really need to invest in the platform to enable all the different product engineering teams to be really able to build for all these product SKUs. So maybe the thing to level set here first is, what does platform look like in 2023, right? If you think about the traditional idea of platform, it really focuses a lot more on the technology layer, right? That thin layer above the infrastructure, right? Just the platform teams will help you with your developer experience or help you with how to run your services. But I think one of the shifts within the industry right now is that set of problems have become easier and easier. And what you actually need is an opinionated platform that enables you to actually solve real business problems, right? So it's no longer just about kind of like the technology layers. These platforms are very kind of like going up the stack and really focusing on, hey, how do we build products, and how do we enable building products to be really easy, really cohesive, right, and really quick. And this is one of my favorite quotes from my now former CEO, really thinking about what does platform look like, right? And platform for Rippling really kind of embodies the business vision, right? Which is, hey, all B2B software at the end just converges down to a set of reports, workflows, alerts, permissions, approvals, yada, yada, right? And really having us build as part of that platform will enable products to be built really quickly, just utilizing these things. So this is a quick layout of the Rippling platform, right? You can see we kind of like categorize as 3 core layers, right? The first layer, the object graph, the universal object, is really how people interact with the underlying platform. The second layer, the kind of like workflows, supergroups, custom objects, yada, yada, will really help be kind of like that end user facing layer, right? The users are seeing these things, and different product teams are embedding these different platforms into their products. And then the last layer, which is really thinking about more the data platform, the async processing, the search platform, et cetera. These are more what people may traditionally think of platform, right? The things that are a little bit away from the users, the things that are the underlying technologies that help you really run your engineering work. So we'll kind of now go through a lot more tactical examples on like how we've built platform within Rippling. So one of the maybe key questions that a lot of people may ask when you're building a platform is like, do we want to platformize first or do we want to platformize later, right? Should you let your product engineering team kind of build ahead and build something MVP, and once you have enough users, then you start to centralize and platformize? Or should you, as the platform team, be the bottleneck, right? Be the team that, okay, we have to invest and we have to build first, and then allow the product teams to integrate into it. And there's a lot of things that I would say at the end of the day, the product engineering team may end up underestimating, right? It's a lot of like, hey, I can just build this over a weekend, kind of like a very, hacker news type of feeling. There's a lot of times when you build that first initial MVP, it's not good enough, right? There's so many things that you haven't thought about because that's not the problem space, that's not the domain specific thing that you're thinking about day to day. So I'll give you examples of both, right? So example of things that we've platformized first, and something that is reporting, right? We discourage any other team from building any sort of reporting visualization type of product because we know it's a hard problem. We know there's so many domain specific things that people need to see. And, for us, its migration cost is really high. If you build your own reporting engine and you build your own analytics platform, to migrate that to an existing platform is challenging, right? That's why we say, hey, you shouldn't ever build that, and we should build the centralized thing first. And sometimes even when we don't have the feature available, we still say like, hey, don't build your own, like wait for us, or you can contribute back to the platform, but we don't let you do that. Example of something that we say, hey, we platformize later, and we'll come back into it is something like commenting, right? So if you think about different types of products like spend management, applicant tracking systems, performance management products, all have some version of commenting, right? It's like, hey, Susan, like this candidate looks good, or hey, Bob, like, are you sure you want to leave this feedback for this person, right? And basically, all these three products have built their own version of this, and we ended up taking all the requirements of rebuilding as a platform and allowing everyone to integrate into it. And the reason why we end up doing this later is because this is kind of like a more simple platform when you think about commenting, right? It's an easy two-way door thing. If you build it later, the migration cost is pretty low to migrate to the platform afterwards. That's why we're like, okay, you guys build it. You don't have to wait for us to build the platform first. So in the kind of following through the example of like platformizing first, right? If you do have to build a new platform, you have to really think about how do you sell that to the org, right? How do you make sure people get involved? So that typically means you're working with all your customers, you're sometimes embedding with that team, right? You're working on their timelines because they might have like alpha, beta, et cetera, launches that you want to intact. And one of the key tricks and key things that we've seen to really get buy-in for platform components is to have that periodic demo, right? The weekly, bi-weekly demo that shows like, hey, what we've been doing, like what you as a prospective customer, even if you're not thinking about using it today, if you're thinking about using it 6 months down the line, what are we building and what should you be thinking about with respect to the platform, and how can you give feedback as early as possible to something that you'll need down the line? Again, similarly, kind of like being able to work with the team here is really going to be helpful for working with the product team is really going to be helpful for kind of like building that advocacy within the org, right? One of the things that we've seen really work out is like with these periodic demos is actually sometimes the actual different product engineering teams are being your advocates, right? They're like going around talking to their colleagues in different product verticals, being like, hey, we're using this new reporting engine. Hey, we're using the permissions feature for domain admins, et cetera, that is really helpful for our product, and we now don't have to spend 8 weeks of engineering time building this, right? So having that buy-in across the team is really helpful. So a good example of something that we've built internally is our applicant tracking system, right? You can just see here the number of things that we provided as a platform out of the box that enables the product team to really build a world-class product out of the box, right? You think about things like permissions, right? How do you give all your managers permissions to candidates in their job rec and in their department, under their level, et cetera? If you think about a good example is like approvals, right? I'm sure a lot of you here are hiring managers. You end up always like, hey, I want to hire this person that's out of the band I originally suggested, or they're actually in a different geolocation that I originally intended. We can set up approvals in our applicant tracking system to say, if anything is different, you can do that as long as you get the VP and CFO approval, or whatever approval chain you want to set up, right? And then maybe the last thing, again, dashboards, right? That's a huge feature of any applicant tracking system, just getting that visibility into your recs, especially if you are managing multiple teams. If you're a director or VP, you may have tons of hiring managers, tons of different recs. Just to get visibility into that in any other applicant tracking system is super complex, and it's nearby impossible, right? Versus for Rippling, because we're building this we're building the platform as part of the product, and they're engaging with our platform, we're able to provide reporting out of the box that leverages what Rippling already does with the rest of the product areas, and be able to provide this type of applicant tracking system reporting that no other system can do. So one of the things I actually wanted to talk a little bit deeper into is planning, right? If you think about, as your company hits scale, going from, let's say 20, 30 people, you guys, you can all get in a room virtually or in person, to longer term, once you get into a bigger organization. Our Rippling scale is like 600 something engineers. If you include R&D as a whole, 700 people. How do you make sure that people know what platforms you're doing outside of these like demos, et cetera? And I think some of the things that we found useful are things like both synchronous communication, i.e. literally having those recurring meetings where you talk about and evangelize the platform you're building, as well as the asynchronous communication channels like periodic email updates or Slack channels that you can engage your internal customers with. We always hold office hours to really force those cross-team conversations. And one of the most important things that we found is actually sitting down with every single product team for 30 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on the product, every quarter as part of the planning, right? Getting ahead of the planning process to make sure that you have a good sense of what every product engineering team's needs are. So I'll go through, literally, this is a screenshot. I'll try to black out some of the actual details here. But you can see here, this is actually our quarterly planning sheet from the last quarter I was there, where we've kind of looked at kind of like from every single product team, what are they looking for? What are their requirements? We thought about their kind of priority, both in terms of the global like company level priority, as well as internally within that product, what is the priority of that feature or functionality? And then we kind of like are able to take all those things, blender it together with the resourcing on the individual platforms to be able to say, okay, here's the set of things we can accomplish, demarked by the green, and here are the things that we can't accomplish this quarter, demarked by the red. And we use that afterwards to be able to publish it to all the different product teams so they have a sense of like what the roadmap looks like for the quarter or the quarters ahead. But I think this is really helpful for our planning process, and then obviously coming from the actual post-planning, we convert the spreadsheet into Jira's, et cetera, into the actual planning tools instead of just spreadsheets. So, now that we talked a lot about kind of like all the different platform components, everything that we have, one of the things that is really helpful is to understand and measure success, right? So success can come at two different levels, especially when we talk about a platform like this. First level is really the internal developer, right? So internally, are people happy with the platform that you've built, right? Do they have clarity on what your roadmap looks like so they know what is going to happen not just like next week, but next quarter, 2 quarters from now, a year down the line, right? Do they agree and have feel support with respect to your documentation, with respect to your developer guides, or even the number of office hours, or do they feel heard from like their issues that they're raising, right? And then we do this type of survey quarterly, where I've snapshotted some of the questions that we ask. I think it's like a 40-question survey I send out every quarter, where I'm personally sending it out, and I'm personally chasing down every product engineering lead and every PM lead to be able to say like, hey, push your team on answering the survey, right? And this is the only way we can really get good internal feedback that is not that is unbiased, that it doesn't depend on having these day-to-day conversations. And a lot of this kind of like, with the survey result, we also obviously take it as part of our input to our planning process, right? This, if someone has issues on developer experience on one side or another, we then dive a little bit deeper and figure out like, what can we do within the quarter or within the next couple of months to really think about improving those areas, improving those hotspots. So externally, there's a lot of other vectors that you can measure, right? So this is going to get a little bit murky because it really depends on your definition of platform and how it kind of how it's defined, right? For us, we have these kind of 4 major measurements, right? So revenue, for us, Rippling, actually the platform, the Unity layer is actually the biggest revenue driver of the company. We also have internal usage and adoption metrics around like how many people are using workflows, how often are people setting up approvals, or how many times are people going to the reports app, et cetera. We take a look at feedback from the individual customers as well, right? So this becomes a little bit challenging because there a lot of times the feedback is indirectly through a different product layer, right? So i.e. someone using the payroll product could be complaining about reporting, right? But that doesn't necessarily get routed to you. You have to figure out ways to work with your CX leaders to really get visibility into that. And then the last, maybe just more easily quantifiable thing is just number of support tickets, right? Number of things that get escalated up that you have to go fix, or you have to kind of call fire drills to really resolve. Another kind of like great learning from Rippling is really around the complexity of the platforms once it hits scale, right? So one of the challenges we have is, when we think about why I joined in 2019, every product kind of like integrated with every product, and we didn't really have a platform, right, before I started. And the things that we drove are kind of like initially in that, in the middle section, the 2020 to 2022 area, right, where we were kind of like interacting with every single product and integrating that way, right? But one of the challenges we found is like as the number of applications grew, it became untenable. And so we end up having to create a common abstraction layer, which we call object graph / universal object, that really enabled a single point of unification so that when we have our 30-something different applications, they're not M by M intersecting with all the different platform components. They have one single point of integration. Another thought kind of like around how you think about building a platform is really around how you're hiring and how you're building the team, right? The typical failure mode for platform, again, is hiring for that very typical platform engineer who might be a brilliant engineer but don't really work well with others. And if you guys have learned anything from the talk, like a lot of what is involved in platform is just working with others and talking with everyone in the engineering org, right? So, you want to find a team who, you want to build a team who can really go evangelize your platform as well as talk to everyone else in the engineering org, really continue to get buy-in and get feedback for what is needed to be done. And then I think the last bit of area I wanted to cover is just investment, right? So this is kind of like a little bit benchmarking of what you as a company might want to invest in. So for single product engineering org, you're typically around 20 or 30% of your engineering org is on the platform infrastructure side of the world, versus kind of like for a more multi-product org, it can go up a lot more, right, to 30 to 50%. Again, this is like rough ballpark numbers, and it really depends on your how you set up your engineering team as a whole. And then to summarize some of the kind of learnings we've talked through here, really thinking about what platform means to your company, right? Building a platform that reflects the product vision of your company, using your platform to enable product engineering to move really quickly and build effectively. And then lastly, focus on building the alignment across your engineering org to make sure that people know about your platform capabilities and are consistently building on top of it. And, all right, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Tony. Great. I think it's really interesting to hear about the dynamic between these teams. I always curious about that, and how you partner and integrate. So we do have quite a few questions. So let's start with one I want to mention that's easy. Does Rippling dog food its own solution?
Yes. So we are consistently dog fooding our product. The joke is Parker, our CEO, is like still the only person who's allowed to run payroll. So you can imagine the CEO every couple of days running payroll for a 2,000 person company that's global, right? But it forces us to make sure the product is so easy to use that literally someone who could spare 5 minutes in a day can run and do everything.
Well, I was going to say, you could just automate it. Does he know that? That's what I do. All right. How does Rippling balance the short-term demands of product development with the long-term vision of building a generational company with a world-class platform?
Yeah, so I think that one's a little bit more challenging. Again, like it depends on a company-to-company basis. For Rippling, we're speaking from a position of advantage where we are well capitalized, where we can afford to make sure that we're building the platform right and et cetera. This is probably not the advice I would give to a very, very early stage company where you would have to focus a lot more on kind of like the product iteration development. And one of the things that, going back to the whether you want to platformize first or later, another vector I didn't really talk about is just what is the product you're trying to build, right? Are you trying to build a product where you don't have good confidence in the product market fit and you're trying to just see if it works, throw against the wall, kind of see if it works? If that's the case, you definitely need to, just build the product first. Don't think about the platform. If you're pretty sure about the product market fit you're going to get within the thing that you're building, then you do need to think a little bit more about, what you're building ahead of time and how you're going to generalize how you're thinking about the platform capabilities under the hood.
All right. What key indicators or factors guide your decisions on when and where to invest in platform projects? So
this comes back to really just talking to more people in the team, right? A lot of times people are not going to be like, oh, I really wish you built X or I really wish you built Y. They're talking about like, oh, for my product, I need to do this, right? Or for this problem, I need to resolve it this way, right? And part of the kind of like engineering leadership, especially on the platform side, is you have to really be everywhere in your company and really understand the business well enough to start to synthesize some of the common areas and commonalities across the different product engineering teams.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. It's all back to how well you communicate.
Yeah.
Can you provide insights into how you determine what constitutes a platform at Rippling and the team structure involved in building it?
Yeah. So, I mean, the definition of platform is a little bit more fluid. Obviously, again, like it's evolving over time. How we consider platform is anything. Well, we have our 3 core product engineering orgs, which are the HR products, IT products, and financial products, each of which is serving that buyer profile. Anything that cuts across these engineering orgs, we consider as either platform and infra, and then we kind of like make a decision accordingly based on like how generalizable it is, as well as like where it is in the technology stack. So that's how we end up determining. And there's a second part to the question?
The second part was the team structure involved in building it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very like platform by platform dependent. And so one of the gotchas is actually a lot of times people underestimate the amount of front end needed for a lot of these platforms. Again, we're talking about more product and user-facing platforms, but we say typically is a couple of back-end engineers, one tech lead and one front-end engineer to really see the platform. But a lot of times we actually end up needing more and more front-end engineering resources just because a lot of these things have complex UX implications, especially when you think about the UX implications across all the different product teams using these platforms and embedding these platforms.
Yeah, like that little stirring coffee thing.
Yeah, that was a good. I was there when we had to build that. Yeah.
All right, I think we have time for one more. What measures do you use to assess the success and impact of the platform? You talked a little bit about that already.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's anything more you want to say about that.
I think one of the, again, like I think public feedback is really helpful. So definitely if you guys have any thoughts and are users of Rippling, if you have any issues, then definitely let me know. I think that's like one of the things I really try to do is like outside of the day-to-day talking to existing customers, understanding what people are doing with the product as well. And that's helpful for feedback on what we should be doing as a company as well as on the platform as a whole.
Okay, well, look, I think we have just one more, so let's tackle it. When building platform, how do you predict the future use cases?
Yeah, one of the things that I would say the platform engineering org, and we didn't really cover this topic, which is we actually have a lot of PMs on the platform engineering side, right? So we have roughly in the order of 1 PM per 1 or 2 platform areas, and they're in lockstep with the greater product engineering org, right? So we don't necessarily predict. We literally, again, go understand the product roadmap for all of our counterparts across the engineering org. I definitely lean a lot on my product counterparts to be able to really help do those initial gathering and outreaches, and then taking all those feedback, taking kind of a gap of purview of all the different products that we're building for the next couple of quarters, next couple of years. And that really helps us to understand where should we be investing on the platform and where we should be building net new things that people haven't even thought about yet.
Sounds like a good plan. All right, one last question, my question. What do you enjoy doing so much that it makes you completely lose track of time?
I think that's, for me, actually, it is still coding every once in a while. I do get back into coding every once in a while. And for me, I think when you're in the zone, you lose track of food, you lose track of anything else, and that actually still
Do none
is
of
the
you
case for me.
like binge watch Netflix? Am I just the only one losing track of time in front of the TV? All right, well, thank you so much. It's been amazing. And thank you, everyone.